You're in the sweet spot, baby. You're in the sweet spot, girl. You're in the sweet spot, darling. It's a magical kingdom in a mixed up world. You're in the sweet spot, baby. You're in the sweet spot, girl. You're in the sweet spot, darling. It's a magical kingdom in a mixed up world. You're in the sweet spot, baby. You're in the sweet spot, girl. You're in the sweet spot, darling. It's a magical kingdom in a mixed up world. It's a magical kingdom in a mixed up world. It's a magical kingdom in a mixed up world.
Welcome to the Sweep Spot Podcast. My name is Lynn, your host, and Ken's my co-host. Ken, how's it going?
Oh, Lynn, I am so happy to be here. I'm looking forward to this episode, and I'm glad we're going, we're doing these weekly now.
That's right.
Yeah.
This is episode 340.
340?
Yes.
Oh, my goodness. That's just amazing, Lynn. That's absolutely amazing.
I know. Ken and I are both former Disneyland Custodial cast members, and we talk about Disneyland history, Disneyland current events. We have interviews with, authors, Imagineers, former cast members.
Yes.
Everything. So we're also authors of 2 books called Cleaning the Kingdom. You can get both of those books on Amazon, or you can get them signed at our website, thesweepspot.com. And the audiobook is also on Audible. And
Yes.
For the first book, the second book will be available on Audible, but not until later this year, fall or something like that.
Explain. You can also get books autographed at D23 Expo.
D23 Expo. We will be there September 9th, 10th, and 11th. And
Yes.
I know that it's sold out, but I've seen people selling their tickets online that can't make it or whatever. So I know there's ways to get people know.
If you have tickets, which you might, you should come see us.
Yes, bring your books if you already have them. We will be happy to sign them.
Yes.
We'll have books to sell, and we can sign them there. We're also going to have both of our books on audio that you can take with you. We can sign those too for sale, and that's a limited edition thing. So don't miss out on that if that's something that interests you. But yeah, we'll be there. And want to mention our Patreon, because we have a Patreon of people that have been requesting a way that they can help support the show and be a part of it. And so we open this up, and what it is you get 1 bonus episode per month. Just Ken and I talking about something, a topic, obviously to do with Disneyland. And you also get to participate, if you want to, in 1 episode live as we do the current events. And I send a link out through Patreon to everyone, and you'll get that link. And it's
once per month.
Yeah, it's a YouTube link. So then, but it's only for people that have that link, and we'll send that out. It's once a month, and I think we're doing it on the next show. I think it's on the 19th of August. So I will send that out probably the week of, and then the day of, to remind everyone. So it's $5 or more, and you can get those benefits there. So speaking of people, we have a new Patreon I wanted to mention, and his name is Bob Thomas.
Oh wow!
Yeah,
that's a good name.
Yeah,
and and one that we wouldn't butcher. So
no,
thank you for your support.
Yes, thank you very much, Bob. We really appreciate it. And also, I wanted to mention real quick, because I've been utilizing Instagram a lot more, and I have an account on there called The Sweep Spot, and especially because I wanted to mention it because especially as we get to D23, I'm going to post a lot of stuff from D23 on Instagram. I'm starting to learn Instagram, Ken. I posted this reel on there, and it was a Spider-Man video that Spider-Man, the animatronic they have, and he's swinging across, and I put it to some music. It's a U2 song, and it has over 530,000 views. So
wow,
it's crazy. So, anyways, follow me over on Instagram. We're going to be posting a lot of stuff there. We'll have some videos and things there from D23 there. So, Ken.
Yes.
We also have a sponsor, don't we?
Well, we do, but first, before I wanted to explain. We've got Concierge. Concierge.com, CONCIEARS.com. There are magical vacation planning partners, and we always tell you if you want to book a Disney getaway vacation to any Disney destination, contact concierge.com. Tell them the Sweep Spot sent you. Book a package with them, and you can get a special gift. That I wouldn't plan another Disney vacation without them. So do that, and we're very grateful for them for their support of the show. And I wanted to point out that this is a topical episode. So if you wanted our take on recent Disneyland news, you could get the previous episode, or then the next episode will cover the stuff that happened this past week and what's going to happen this next week. So you can get our thoughts on current events. This is going to be a topical episode where we often go into history, and we have on this episode we have Jim Korkis. Okay, and one of our favorite guests. We always have great guests. When we have guests, we don't always have guests, but we have guests frequently, and they're all great. But Jim is wonderful. He is a fan favorite. A lot of the listeners mention Jim when they talk to us about the show. He's got great books that you can buy, so check those out. But Jim is going to be talking with us about the year 1972 at Disneyland.
That's right. So
some of us weren't even born by then, but and others of you remember 1972 fondly. Yeah. So we're going to be talking about that in this episode. But again, this is a topical episode. You won't have to wade through current events to get to that. That's coming right up. But if you do want to hear current events, you can check out our previous episode or the next episode, because we're alternating. Every week we'll have an episode. One will be topical, one will be current events. So alternating. So check it out if you're interested. But stay tuned, and we're going to be talking with Jim.
Great, I'm excited. Let's do it.
Summer's here. You know what that means. Summer nights and summer lights. Millions and millions of them, shining and sparkling through the streets of Disneyland. Yes, the Main Street Electrical Parade is back, bigger and brighter than ever. Every night beginning May 27 at Disneyland.
Welcome to the one and only original Country Bear Jamboree, featuring a bit of Americana, our musical heritage of the past.
Okay, for our main segment, we're going to welcome back a guest that we always love talking to. Someone that's one of our most popular requested guests, and that is author and Disney historian Jim Korkis. Welcome back, Jim.
Well, thank you for such a kind introduction. I always love being on the Sweep Spot. It's always so much fun, and it's such a great opportunity to share information with people who are really interested. And I know that you have some of the greatest listeners ever when it comes to Disney. In fact, I want to give out a shout-out to Christine, who left an amazing review on Amazon for my book, Disneyland Historical Highlights, the Walt and Roy Disney years, 1954 and 1972, which was inspired by the Sweep Spot podcast, so that each chapter is devoted to 1 year in Disneyland history. And again, the book is dedicated to the both of you with great respect, great fondness, and great thanks. To inspire that book, because I love rereading. In fact, I love rereading it so much. When I reread it, it's like I don't remember writing it.
Yeah.
So I hope that's not the sign of, something's going on in your mind there, Jim. But and Lynn wrote a great review on Amazon as well. But Christine was one of those, surprises where you look at that and you just smile and you go, gosh, somebody really is interested in this stuff. So, because sometimes I worry about that. As a writer, and the two of you know this as well, you're working alone and you're not getting the feedback like from an audience or whatever. So you don't know, gee, is anybody going to be interested in this? Should I keep that in? Should I leave that out? Should I explain something? I don't know. And I guess there are people interested because the books still keep selling, and I still keep writing books. So until that doesn't happen, I just love doing the Sweep Spot. So, and I'm excited again to do it tonight, because as we were talking about off mic, I have a great fondness for the early years of Disneyland, and especially years where I actually, because I grew up in Glendale, California, I actually got to go to Disneyland. And so 1972 is a year that I actually got to go to Disneyland. And I, of course, I was much younger. I had more hair. I had less stomach, and less money in my pocket, certainly. And but again, gas was only 36 cents a gallon, so you could drive to Disneyland.
Wow. And
what a year. You had films like Godfather. You had films like Cabaret, and they just took over the Oscars. And of course, 72 had one of my favorite films, Dr. Phibes Rises Again, with Vincent Price, because I was just a huge Vincent Price film. I think some people think that he's vaguely English or whatever. He was born in Missouri, for crying out loud. And he's actually a descendant of the first baby that was born in the Plymouth colony when the Mayflower came over. And I actually got to meet him in person briefly. He was performing as Captain Hook in a production of Peter Pan, which was in Melodyland, right across the street from Disneyland.
Right.
And afterwards, after the performance, I got to go, and I sheepishly asked for his autograph and told him how much and he was so gracious. He was so charming. He was so nice, and he talked about his interpretation of Captain Hook, which I'm going to be including in my newest book coming out in September, Off to Neverland, 70 Years of Disney's Peter Pan. And covers everything. Covers the film, covers Peter Pan in the Disney parks, covers Disney's Peter Pan in comics, in the ice skating shows, in all of those things like the Disney Fairy franchise and the upcoming live-action film and Jake and the Neverland Pirates, all of that. But that was great. But again, we tend to forget that 72 That's when Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson was born, and Ben Affleck was born, and J. Edgar Hoover died.
Oh.
And then, of course, we had Watergate.
It was when Ken Pellman was conceived. So,
really?
I'm sure. Everybody wanted to know that.
I hope there is a historical marker signifying that. You know, if not, we should start a GoFundMe page, and I'll contribute to that. So because we don't want to forget those people who have made the world better.
Yeah.
A better place because of their very existence. Mm-hmm. Speaking of which, of course, Roy O. Disney. We were talking a little bit about Roy O. Disney off mic too, and about how he seems to have been forgotten, by the Disney company, and of course. Even though he had passed away in December 1971 from a cerebral hemorrhage, he was still very much involved with Disneyland 1972. Although his death did not affect Disneyland as significantly as Walt, and that's not because Roy was a lesser person. It was because Roy had already made plans to transition out of the company. He was planning to attend the February 1972 stockholders meeting, and take the victory lap for the opening of Walt Disney World. And he had tickets. He already had tickets for a cruise with his wife Edna. And at the stockholders meeting, he was going to officially turn things over to Card Walker and Don Tatum. So his death didn't, suddenly impact Disneyland as much as Walt's death did. But again, Roy was also had signed off on some of the things that were going to pop up in 1972. I remember when I interviewed Imagineer Marty Sklar about things, and what a wonderful storyteller, and another very gracious person. He told me that, end of 71, beginning of 72, the Walt Disney Company suddenly realized that they had been ignoring Disneyland. The last ticketed attraction that opened at Disneyland was in 1969. That was the Haunted Mansion. There were really no, major things introduced for 3 years because all of the time, all of the resources, all of the personnel were focused on getting Walt Disney World opened in 1971. Mm-hmm. And when they realized that, they realized, my gosh, we better do something here, at Disneyland. It's been 3 years, and we can't just skate along on the goodwill of the guests who are coming. And but even then, they went. I don't want to say go on the cheap. The term that Disney uses is cost efficient. So what they did is they pulled basically two of the most popular attractions at Walt Disney World for Disneyland. Even though the philosophy, and Roy's philosophy, was there should be unique things at each park, because that will make the park special. And
imagine that.
Yeah. And even though there are some similarities, they are different parks. They have different personalities, different DNAs, So to heck with that one park philosophy where the same napkin you get at Walt Disney World can be used at Disneyland, you know. Things should be different, but it was like, well, you know, Walt Disney World's pretty expensive. And even though it's starting to make money, you know, we're still struggling a bit. So, again, one of the most popular attractions, Country Bear Jamboree. So we'll bring it, and we'll be talking about this. And gosh, it's so popular. Instead of having one theater like they have at Walt Disney World, we'll have 2 theaters because everybody's going to want to see this. And then one of the popular things at Walt Disney World was the electrical water pageant on the Seven Seas Lagoon in front of the Magic Kingdom. And again, Walt Disney World, they're running out of money, but it's like, my gosh, the people leaving after the fireworks are clogging up, you know, the ramps going up to the monorail, you know, and this is really guest dissatisfaction. And we're doing a luau on the beach at Polynesian Resort, but there's just this black lagoon in the back of it there because there's nothing there. And so we need a backdrop for that. We need something to distract people who are, you know, jamming up on the ramps to get to the monorail. So they came up with the electrical water pageant, which was basically just wooden frames, chicken wire, and Christmas light bulbs. That's it.
Wow.
And when I got to Walt Disney World in 1995, I got to go backstage and I got to see the electric water pageant up close, and it's like, can there be anything in the world cheaper than this? But again, it's pitch black out there, and you have that one string of lights, and then you have the same figure in a different position, so that when you turn off those lights and you turn on the other lights, you get this illusion of movement. And so it looks like, oh, well, this is just very expensive. Look at the animation that is being created here. And so basically, since that was so inexpensive, the feeling was, well, let's bring this to Disneyland, and we can do that. You know, Rivers of America is really too small for that. But what we can do is we'll just, you know, take it right down Main Street, you know, and we can do the same little cheap 2-dimensional, you know, frames because it'll be pitch dark. You know, who will see? And in their first rehearsal, they blew out all the power in the park. Until they determined how to get those batteries operating on each individual, you know, float, and there were cast members who were getting burns, you know, in the costumes with because it had never been done before.
Right.
You know, so you do that. So we're going to jump into 1972. Do you guys have some things to say before we get started?
I have some fun facts about just to kind of get us started and get our introduction into it. That year they had, up to that point they had 9.4 million in the park that year. The average daily guest was 30,000.
Wow.
I know.
That's just a drop in the bucket these days.
I know. That would be a really slow day nowadays.
Yes.
And the prices, so I don't have everyone, but just a few to give everyone an idea. The Big Ten book was $4.95, and
that included admission, right?
Right. And they have the Big Jumbo was $5.95. They had one called a Special 12 that was $4.75. Parking was still 50 cents in 72. I know.
that won't even buy you a cup of water at Disneyland today.
No. Yeah, so that's all I have, just a few things. But.
No, and then of course there, and one of the reasons I went so often is my dad was a member of the Magic Kingdom Club. So you had the Magic Kingdom Club card, so you could get a special ticket book, which cost less and had at least 2 additional tickets in there. So, my gosh,
Wow.
that was back in the days when Disneyland cared about its guests and wanted to give, more value than what you paid for. So, but that was long gone. And
Wow.
And it's hard to believe, but I think I remember in 1972 feeling, this park's too crowded.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I have to wait in line 5 or 10 minutes for a ride. This is too crowded.
Yeah.
We really don't appreciate what we have fully until it's gone. So, so those of you going to Disneyland, appreciate what you have now, because in another 5-10 years, you're going to have to mortgage your children and all of this for a half day at Disneyland.
Yeah.
But, one of the things that Disneyland really did, especially during, the slow periods or when money was an issue, is they would do events, in the park. And that was especially strong for locals to go because, again, it's like, oh, what are they going to do? And it's only there for a limited amount of time. And Disneyland also gave away stuff, posters, pins.
Wow.
Not pins, buttons, free for these events. And so it's like, oh, I got to go. And so the biggie in the big event in 1972 was Winnie the Pooh for president.
Yes.
It was an election year. Pooh in 72. And Disneyland had danced around in 1968 with a tentative promotion for that where they announced that Pooh was running for president, and they did a little short segment in the Kids of the World, Kids of the Kingdom show on the Tomorrowland stage. Just a short segment of Winnie the Pooh for president, went over like gangbusters.
Wow.
So by the time 72 came around, it's like, we've got to take advantage of this. There's very little upfront, investment and a huge back-end payback, for this, especially since in 72, Sears, and I don't know if there's still Sears stores around. As a kid, I loved going to Sears, and Sears had exclusive Disney merchandise and all of this, and including the Mark's Disneyland playset. But that's a whole nother show, whole nother story. Anyway, Sears had the exclusive right to Disney's Winnie the Pooh. And they were making money hands over fist. And so they got involved with the promotion of Pooh for president because also they could then generate other merchandise, including a little plush figure with Pooh in his campaign costume. The Uncle Sam top hat and the vest and all of that.
Right.
And so the plans is that Pooh and Tigger and Eeyore would greet guests at their national campaign headquarters, which happened to be the Carnation Plaza Gardens. And I miss the Carnation Plaza Gardens, but that's a whole other story.
Yeah.
And so Disney wasn't quite sure how this was going to go over, but it's like, let's do something a little bit more elaborate than 1968. So in on October 1st, 1972, and that's the anniversary of the opening of Walt Disney World, they had a convention at Walt Disney World, again as an event to draw people in there. And that is where Pooh was going to be nominated for president on the Children's Party ticket. And there were drawings that had been held at Sears Roebuck, and those stores across the country selected delegates from each of the 50 states to be sent with their families to Walt Disney World to nominate Pooh for president. And this all happened in the forecourt of Cinderella Castle, and it was a 2-day event, and Pooh was so tired from this, he had to go to his West Coast retreat, Disneyland. And
Love it.
because that's where all of the activity was going to take place for the rest of the year. And Pooh's platform, of course, was honey in every pot, and lick the high prices of ice cream cones, hot fudge sundaes every Monday, and banning all spankings. And of course, this was pre-recorded by the voice of Winnie the Pooh, Sterling Holloway. So, you know, when he presented this each day at Disneyland, you know, the crowd just roared and applauded and the whole bit. And so Pooh's press secretary was Tigger. And after he spent some time at Disneyland, they did a 2-week cross-country whistle-stop train campaign tour. This was all sponsored by Sears.
Wow.
And Disney loves this when a company gets involved and picks up the cost or most of the cost of this. So Sears and Amtrak, you know, did this and sent them off from the Los Angeles Union Station, and they stopped in towns on their way to Chicago, and to Chicago, because again, that's Walt Disney. And then to Washington, D.C. And, you know, they also hit up Kansas City, another, you know, Walt, milestone. And then went west and up the coast to Seattle. Seattle? What does that have to do? Oh, that's where Walt and Lily spent their honeymoon. Oh. All right. Right?
I know that, yeah.
It all connects. You connect the dots, right? You know what? We really need to do a show or two just about Walt, because there's so much that people don't know about Walt. I wrote a book and called Call Me Walt, All the Things You Never Knew About Walt Disney, and that his favorite hobby was not making miniatures, was not trains, it was lawn bowling. And there's a whole chapter on lawn bowling, how involved he was. Well, but again, we can save that for another time.
Yeah.
Maybe we should do a show about Walt Disneyland. So Walt's philosophy. How did Walt run Disneyland? You know, on a day-to-day, year-to-year basis.
Yeah, let's do it.
Those of you who are listening, if you're interested, you've got to contact Lynn and Ken and tell them, that's a good idea. Even though it came from Jim Korkis, that's a good idea. You better do that. Make that happen. Okay.
Yes.
So anyway, they were out for 2 weeks, and you know, they went through some small towns, and part of the train had a baggage car that was adapted so it was a stage. And what would happen is there were big doors on either side, so either side could open depending on which side the audience was at, you know, at a particular train station, and they do it a 10 to 15 minute, you know, a show to a pre-recorded soundtrack, And then and it's my understanding that show was later also done at Disneyland there, or at least a version of it. Mm-hmm. And then afterwards, the characters joined the audience for, photo opportunities. And a very funny story told to me by the photographer who was on the train, the official Disney photographer. He said one night, they were asleep, and 1:30 a.m. they were woken up because as they approached this small town in New Mexico. How small was it? It had a population of 200 people, but at the station there were 2,000 people waiting to see Winnie the Pooh at 1:30 a.m. in the morning. And there were children bundled up sitting on their dad's shoulders and more. So they had to switch to a siding, and, they opened up and they did the show, and, again, huge hit. This is how popular, some people don't realize that at one point Winnie the Pooh was more popular than Mickey Mouse, and there was more Winnie the Pooh merchandise sold, Disney Winnie the Pooh merchandise sold than Mickey Mouse merchandise. And I know people are worried, and they go, wait a minute, Winnie the Pooh is falling into public domain, right? And yes, he is, but Disney's Winnie the Pooh is not. And not only is Disney's version of Winnie the Pooh copyrighted, it's also trademarked. And a trademark doesn't run out unless you fail to use it. Okay, and so Pooh's vice president was going to be Owl. And as Tigger pointed out, they were considering Owl because he appealed to both the left and the right-wingers. But Pooh ended up picking up Piglet. And of course, at all of these rallies across the country, there were marching bands and free balloons and pictures and buttons and posters for the kids, all of this supplied by Sears. And some of this stuff was also at Disneyland, So I'm sure some listeners now are, let me go on eBay and see what's there. Okay. So what happened is when they returned, they did Pooh, Tigger, Eeyore, did meet and greets at Carnation Plaza Gardens. Interestingly enough, the California Orange County Registrar of Voters admitted that Pooh did receive some votes in the 1972 election, and but because records weren't computerized in those years, the exact amount is unknown, and probably Mickey Mouse received plenty of votes as well. He receives write-in votes every presidential election. But anyway, the popularity of this 1972 campaign event, guaranteed there'll be another in 1976. And I remember going and in 76, I believe the person running against Winnie the Pooh was Captain Hook. And when you went into the park, you were given a ballot so you could vote for either Pooh or Hook and put it in the ballot box. And then at the end of the day, Captain Hook would claim that the election was stolen from him because he's a villain. And, all of this. And I loved Captain Hook. Sometimes I would go to the park and I would vote for Captain Hook because I just loved Captain Hook as a character. What a nice thing to do at the park. We don't seem to have, those little fun, low-key events anymore. Out here in Florida, it's all been formalized. You have the Food and Wine Festival, you have the Flower and Garden Festival, you have the Masters of Art Festival, you have this festival. So you go from one festival to another, to another, to another, to another. Once upon a time, it was, look, we're only going to be here for a limited time. We're not going to be here next year. We're doing this, and we're going to give you some free stuff. Mm-hmm. Let me get my grumpy old man. I don't know why. When I get on this show, I get that grumpy old man feeling. Get those kids off my lawn. Turn down that music. It's too loud. I can't understand the lyrics. Get out of here.
Well, I have a question for you because you're mentioning the Pooh Days, and I don't know if you're going to get on this or not, but during my research, I found another one that's called Small World Days. I'm just wondering what that is about.
Yes, why did you tell us about it?
Well, I don't know about it. That's what I just found it, and I thought, what is that? Because where I found it, they didn't have an explanation, so I was, I was curious what it was.
Yeah, it wasn't a as big as the Winnie the Pooh, so there was no merchandise being given out or merchandise being sold, and again, it was just something to draw people to the parks and to celebrate Walt's philosophy of better understanding and appreciation of other cultures. So you had Bessie Walker and the band, and I believe there was also, according to my research, there was also a choir, a children's choir. Mm-hmm. I don't know if it was a children's choir of kids from around the world or not, but it was and it was there, again. Come to the park, see this, maybe you haven't ridden Small World in a while. Now's a good time, to do this. Mm-hmm. And so, there were always these, especially when Walt was alive, there were always these little special things. In the early days of Disneyland, sometimes Walt would do something like a Western weekend where he would invite, the stars from TV Westerns, to show up at the park where people could meet them in person and get an autograph or something, and that was always fun. And again, on the other hand, it was always frustrating if you couldn't go, and but in life, that's the way it is.
Yeah.
Well, let's get to a new land.
Okay.
That opened at Disneyland, Bear Country. In '71, they got rid of the Indian Village for a number of reasons. One of them is people had become less interested in cowboys and Indians. They were more interested now in astronauts. And also these were live entertainers, so that requires, more money, more attention. There were some labor issues, and so it was, cost efficient to get rid of the Indian Village. And again, as I talked with Imagineer Tony Baxter, the problem was nobody would go over there because it's on that little loop of the rivers of America, and it's a dead end. So if you go there, the only way of getting out is just backtracking the way you came in. It's not like, oh, well, I'll go there, but if I'm bored, I'll just use that as a shortcut to get to such and such. Nope, that's it. You went there, you were stuck. And so, and people, as I said, were less interested in seeing Native American culture, and so that was sort of dead acreage. So what can we do to spice that up? Well, Country Bear Jamboree in Walt Disney World, huge hit, and I still love the show. And so they said, okay, we're going to make this, the centerpiece. We're going to make this the weenie that draws people over here, and this will alleviate, some crowding in the park and all of this. And as I said, they said, this is so popular, instead of just building the one theater, we're going to build 2 theaters, you know, which turned out to be a big mistake because people in California weren't as interested in Country Bear as people in Florida. But, you know, so this is only 4 acres, and Disney spent roughly $8 million to transform this. And so the Indian trading posts remain, and the canoes, although they were now themed to Davy Crockett. And why Davy Crockett in Bear Country? Because Davy Crockett killed him a bear when he was only 3.
Oh, yeah.
All the connections, right? Yeah. And then once you know these things, it's like you can't unknow it. Well, of course they would do that, even though you never thought of that before. The Hungry Bear restaurant opened. I loved the Hungry Bear restaurant when it opened. And they had the mile-long bar, as well as the Ursus H. Bear Wilderness Outpost. And to enhance the pathway between Haunted Mansion and the entrance to Bear Country, and to make it seem more that you're now going into the rustic backwoods, there was a mountainside. And just above eye level was a cave, and that was identified as the home of Rufus the Bear, who was in constant hibernation. And you could hear him snoring away. And you know me, I'm always curious. I always want to know, well, why? What did that happen? And how did they make that choice? And what was this? So I went back and I did research, and the snore was an outtake from Snow White and the 7 Dwarfs. It was a snore done by Pinto Colvig, who is the voice of Sleepy in Snow White and the 7 Dwarfs.
Wow.
Well, you know, Disney doesn't throw things away. It all goes into things, and this went into a sound library. And when in Frontierland they opened up the mine train, you know, they built the Rainbow Ridge facade, and there was the El Dorado Hotel there. You know, these small things always made me laugh when they had the gunfighters run up, you know, into the facade, because the facade was all this, you know, small scale, and you have these full scale hiding behind these little doll houses type thing. But anyway, I digress, as always. In the El Dorado Hotel on the 2nd floor, they installed the snore there. So while you were waiting in the train to leave, you would hear little things coming from the buildings, and on the 2nd floor, you heard this snore. And then when they built Bear Country, they moved the snore over to Rufus's cave. And in 72, the exterior of the men's restroom to the area was themed as Rufus's dressing room.
Oh, yeah.
And the female restroom was themed to Trixie from Country Bear Jamboree. And Rufus wasn't part of the Country Bear Jamboree. Everybody assumed he was part, and he was missing going over there and performing. He didn't become part of the Country Bear Jamboree until the Christmas special in '84, where now he's the lone stagehand, and you hear him behind you and up in the booth and all of this, you know, fixing lights and running projections and changing backdrops and struggling and falling and crashing, and you don't hear him talking. You just hear, you know, grunts like Humphrey the Bear. And he was also in the Country Bear Vacation Hoedown in '86 as well. And then later, his cave got moved up to Splash Mountain, where it became Brer Bear's cave, and the snore was then Brer Bear's. Yeah. So at Disneyland, it's always fascinating to follow, where did all these things go? What all? Hey, you know, an idea for another great podcast? I'm just full of ideas. I'm full of something tonight.
What is
I'm full of ideas. Another great podcast, we could do a segment, or we could do 2 or 3, is the Disneyland that never was. because I interviewed Imagineer Eddie Soto, who was going to transform Tom Sawyer's Island into the pirate Jean Lafitte's Island. And he was going to do that to theme in with Haunted Mansion and with Pirates of the Caribbean. And there was going to be a tunnel underneath the rivers of America, so you didn't disrupt, the water traffic on rivers of America. There was going to be a tunnel underneath, which was going to be the Lafitte Mausoleum, which you would enter through the crypt outside Haunted Mansion. And so you'd go through this mausoleum, and you'd be surrounded by ghosts of pirates, and so you're actually going back in time, and then when you pop up on Tom Sawyer's Island, you have all of these themed things to pirate, and then, of course, there was Tony Baxter's Discoveryland, which was going to be in Frontierland with the big Hyperion blimp and all of these different. Well, anyway, those of you who are listening to this show, you better write in to Lynn and Ken and say, "Hey, these are good ideas. Why don't you guys ever come up with good ideas? Let's have Jim back and do that."
Yeah, for sure.
So anyway, Country Bear Jamboree was going to just be a small handful of Florida-only attractions. And those of you listening to the tangents, think of them as just condiments tossed on the main meal, or the cherry on the ice cream sundae. Just a little something extra there, so that a little bit more than anybody else, about Disney. So you can really be that expert for your friends and family. So anyway, this was supposed to be a Florida-only attraction, and so the bears were originally themed to be Florida, So you had Liverlips McGraw was going to be the Miami Serenader, and Trixie was the Tampa Temptation, and the backstory for Big Al was he had grown up in the swamps around Walt Disney World, and they built Walt Disney World around him, so he decided he better get a job there. And so that was the story. But when you move it to Disneyland, that type of thing doesn't, seem to apply anymore. We have plenty of bears out here in Florida, and lately on the news here, I've been seeing, bears not just trying to get into trash cans, but getting into people's houses. I just saw this video of a bear who stole a package off of somebody's front lawn because it was filled with chocolate. He's smarter than the average bear. What? That's another franchise. So anyway, Country Bear Jamboree, wonderful, beautiful ornate proscenium theater, all these audio animatronic bears and a handful of other animals like, Sammy the raccoon, who's the Davy Crockett hat on top of Henry, and because again it was originally Southern, that's why they went with country western, and so it was supposed to be an old-fashioned knee-slapping hoedown at the Grand Ole Opry, just with much more hair. Clap your hands and stomp your feet and try to keep right with them. One sure thing the bear band's got is real old country rhythm. And again, this was actually a Walt thing. People tend to forget that this was one of the last things that Walt ever signed off on. Walt was planning a ski resort, the Mineral King Ski Resort in California in the 1960s. And he decided, after people are skiing all day, I don't want them bored. Let's have entertainment. And what about the people who have accompanied them but don't want to ski, or broke their leg and so they're in a cast? So let's have, an entertainment show. We'll tell them that the bears had come out of the sequoias and we trained them as entertainers, and so there would be 2 or 3 different shows. And so in charge was Imagineer Mark Davis and Albertino. And Albertino was the physical inspiration for the Big Al character. So those of you who have way too much time on your hands, and if you're a Disney fan, you do, you can Google Albertino and take a look at him, and you'll see that's Big Al. That's where Big Al came from. And the project fell through. That's a whole nother show about the environmentalists getting involved and all that. But anyway, the Walt saw different versions that Davis had come up with. There was going to be a one bear band, so the bear would have a drum on his back and harmonica in his mouth and all of this. There were other versions of different bear bands, but Walt liked the Country Bears, and he signed off on that. And he laughed out loud, and Mark said, that was the last time I saw him. He as he stood in the doorway, and he said, "Goodbye, Mark." And he said, that just struck me as very strange because he never said goodbye. He always said, "See you later," or whatever. And so Walt was there during those 2 weeks he had come out of the hospital and had a lung removed. But what had happened is the cancer had metastasized, and he went back in after 2 weeks, and that's all she wrote. Now, not only Albertino, but the 2 of the stars of the show are Henry and Wendell, right? And they were based on a comedy musical country western act known as Homer and Jethro. And in fact, Homer and Jethro wrote songs like Fractured Folk Song and Mama Don't Whoop Little Buford, that are in the show there. And as long as you're Googling, Google Harper Goff. Now, Harper Goff was an Imagineer. He designed the Jungle Cruise at Disneyland. He designed a lot of World Showcase at Epcot. He did an awful lot of things. But he was also a banjo player, and he was in Firehouse 5+2. Mm-hmm. Well, Wendell in Country Bear Jamboree, he's a banjo player. And so look at Wendell and look at a photo of Harper Goff, and the faces look almost exactly alike. Imagineers like to put in, all that, all those little inside jokes there of that happening. Yeah. And again, you not knowing that doesn't ruin the attraction, but knowing it gives you, just a little bit something extra, just that little extra smile. And of course, Mama Don't Whoop Little Buford is not politically correct these days. Corporal punishment. In 72, a lot of people grew up, having corporal punishment, either in church or at school or from their parents. I remember the elementary school I went to in Glendale. The principal had this paddle, and he had holes drilled in it. So there was no air resistance when they whacked you on the behind. Now, I was a good kid, but once I was called into the principal's office, and I was whacked on the behind. And it didn't hurt physically as much as it did you feeling, humiliated and ashamed. But nowadays, you can't even talk about that. So when you're on the plane and you have that kid in the seat behind you who's crying and kicking your seat, dream about that paddle with the holes, drilled into it. So I'm not recommending anything. I'm just recommending
Send
dreaming.
your angry letters to.
Yes.
And I was a school teacher. I've taught every age. I still have my teaching certificate. I still have it valid. I'm not going to teach in Florida because they don't pay well and they don't respect teachers. But I've taught every age group from kindergarten, where I taught creative dramatics, through elementary school, junior high, high school, and even junior college classes. And occasionally I would dream about the paddle with the holes in it, but I would never have the guts to use that.
Yeah.
So it just remains a dream, along with all my other dreams there. And now I'm just sorry I brought it up, but that's what happens when you're on the sweet spot. You never know what you're going to say.
Exactly.
And here's something. Everybody likes to put together their own homemade trivia tests and all that, because they think, oh, well, I've been to Disneyland, hundreds of times. I've seen this hundreds of times or whatever. Okay, what are the names of the 5 bear rugs? That's the bear band. What are the names of the 5 bear rugs? They even sing it in the song. Now's your chance to show off.
I can't.
Paul, John, Ringo, George, and Pete.
Very close. Very close.
No, wait, I've got this. Getty, Neil, and Alex. Well, no, that's only 3. Never mind.
Zeke, Fred, Ted, Zeb, and Tennessee. But I'll give you a chance to redeem yourself. What's the name of Zeb's non-speaking son, who is holding that little teddy bear?
I didn't know he had a name.
Oscar.
Did he?
Oscar.
Really?
Listen, I'll just give you a real easy one. There are only 3. The Sunbonnets. And again, they were supposed to be from Florida as well. The Sunbonnets. The 3 little female bears who sing. And
Bunny,
people at home are going, they're looking through their phone. They're
It's Bunny, Beulah, and Belinda Carlisle. No,
you are so close. Yes, it's Bunny and Beulah. Bubbles. Bubbles is the one you missed.
Bubbles,
so
Bubbles was
close.
a cheerleader. Bubbles was a cheerleader, or then I'm confused.
There you go. But the ones I liked in Country Bear Jamboree especially was Buff the Bison, Max the Deer, and Melvin the Bull Moose. And they were there. I don't know where they came up with that idea, and so they're hanging on the wall and they're talking, and so it's like the Muppets show where you have this commentary there, going on, and they pop up in the Winnie the Pooh ride, but you need to know where to look to see them. But I thought that was a extremely clever idea.
Yeah.
But I'm the guy who loves it when I go to a friend's house and he has a fish on the wall, and you clap, and the fish comes to life and starts to flap and sing. That still makes me laugh, even though I know what that is. But yeah, Country Bear Jamboree is something you can still enjoy today, but not at Disneyland. You have to come out here to Florida to enjoy it. And it is the original show, except with some changes. No, Mama, don't whoop the little Buford. And you shouldn't. You should shoot him instead. But
Wow.
well, that's enough song, for crying out loud. And the other big thing that we've talked about that came to be, and I bet people at home, as soon as I start saying this, will just join in and repeat along. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, Disneyland proudly presents our spectacular festival pageant of nighttime magic and imagination in thousands of sparkling lights and electro-syntho-magnetic musical sounds. The Main Street Electrical Parade. Bum, 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 bum,
Whatever
bum,
happened to
bum,
that
bum.
thing? Kind of disappeared and you never heard about it.
Well, I will tell you what happened. It became a vampire. They kept killing it, and then it would come back. And then they would kill it again, and it would come back. And then they would kill it again, and they would come back. You know, one time they killed it and sold me a used light bulb because the pageant was glowing away, and I still have that. And it came back again.
I always say, when all else fails, bring in the electrical parade. You know.
Yes, that's it. Oh, wait. You know, attendance is down at Disney California Adventure. Put the electrical parade there. You know, so now that they say, yeah, the electrical pageant's going away, it's like, yeah, really? Until you need a couple of extra bucks, or you need some type of a promotion to drive attendance or merchandise sales, you know, then it'll come back. Because it's such.
It's had more retirements than a pro wrestler, you know.
More retirements than Tom Brady, and you know, it's just such a simple and charming parade, and they just were never able to capture anything similar to that. You know, just because you have greater technology doesn't mean that that's going to make it a greater show. You know, light magic, you know, really deserved to glow away, and I was just scared by those figures with those blank white masks, and I even knew what they were supposed to represent, and it was like, this is not an appealing parade. But anyway, the parade was inspired by the electric water pageant, as I said, that also used Baroque Hoedown as its main musical theme, and it had that Moog synthesizer, which is so. How come people don't use Moog synthesizers these days? You know, it has a really cool sound. And so it was also used as a backdrop for the luau show at the Polynesian there. And as I said, it's just two-dimensional frames decorated with colored Christmas bulb light. That's all it is. And images of sea creatures. And now, the director of entertainment for Disneyland, Bob Janney, and Ron Metzger, who actually teaches out here at UCF in Florida, and a fascinating man. In fact, I hope he writes a book. You know, I'm so looking forward to Dick Nunes's book coming out this fall, despite the fact that it's from Disney Editions. And I say despite because Disney Editions has an approved narrative. So many of those stories that we heard from Dick, where it was like, Dick, how can you say something like that? They won't be in the book, but there'll be enough that's in the book that it's like, thank heavens. You know, Dick needs to be recognized and applauded for his work, not only at Walt Disney World, but Disneyland. And so Janney and Metzger decided to develop the dry land version, you know, for Disneyland, you know, with over 500,000 twinkling lights, and the two-dimensional frames. They were two-dimensional flat frames for the longest time, for the first 5 years. That's what it was. And the floats were designed by Bill Justice, who also designed most of the Disneyland floats and parades there. And but unlike the electrical water pageant, you had cast members who were attired in lighted costumes, you know, who walked along and do this, and it's just magical when those lights just go out on Main Street and it's just pitch black, and then you see the lights, and it's like, oh wow, you know, you really are in a different period. Now, the original contractor couldn't complete the floats in time, so Disneyland itself stepped in and finished the floats, and they used some of the previously existing parade floats, just covering them with lights because, again, cost effective. And the new parade, as I said, also used the Baroque hoedown, and it interweaves songs from Disney films, and was produced by the Moog synthesizer, and so it sounded somewhat futuristic, somewhat otherworldly. And Don Dorsey, who was in charge of the music, used 11 synthesizers to create the soundtrack, and Jack Wegner was the voice you heard at the beginning and the end. Now, that original parade in '72 only included the Blue Fairy, a large drum pulled by the Casey Jr. train engine, a Cinderella scene, a Chinese dragon, and a circus calliope. That was it. And the parade did not operate during '75 and '76, as it was replaced temporarily by America on Parade to celebrate the American Bicentennial. Besides running during the day, they also ran it at night. But during that break, that's when the Main Street Electrical Parade was redesigned. So it had more dimensional floats and a longer running time and a memorable patriotic climax. Remember that long American flag. And so the parade now included Tinkerbell, Alice in Wonderland, Cinderella, Peter Pan, Dumbo, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, Pinocchio, and Pete's Dragon. And over the years, units left or were added. At one time, they had a unit for It's a Small World. At another time, they had the Briny Deep float, which was themed to Bedknobs and Broomsticks, a film that many Disney fans have forgotten these days. And at one time, they had a float for 1985's Return to Oz. And few people remember that film these days, But again, you did that at Disneyland as that synergy to promote the park and promote the film. And just a charming parade, and I'm sure people have tons of memories and probably tons of merchandise. A lot of merchandise produced for that parade over the decades. And I can't believe that it's gone for good. In my bones, I feel that sometime this is coming back. There are some things when they leave Disneyland, it's like, nope, that's not going to come back because it costs too much money. It wouldn't appeal to today's audience, whatever. I don't know. But I hope when they bring it back, they don't, give it liposuction and Botox and a facelift and all of this. So it takes away just that simple, magical excitement of seeing the lights in the darkness there.
Right.
And that was pretty much, 1972. For the electrical parade, one of the things that this is why we need to do that show on Disneyland that never was. I talked with Tony Baxter, and there was going to be a lighted Tinkerbell flying down Main Street at the beginning of the Main Street Electrical Parade. He had taken a shell of the Alice in Wonderland figure from the Alice in Wonderland ride, some small figure, and he stripped everything off of it, and he put electronics inside, so it was like a drone helicopter, and it would light up. And so it was going to fly down Main Street and advance the Main Street electrical parade. And they kept doing it, and it worked fine and all that. And then Disney Legal stepped in and said, "You're not going to do that. You know, what if you lose control? What if it hits a guest?" No. So we could have had, you know, the streets go dark, and then you see this tiny, you know, little female figure, you know, light up, and it dashes down, so it looks like it's trailing pixie dust because of the light image, you know, after effect there, dipping down. But never going to be, you know, a lot of things never going to be. You know, George Lucas's Plecto traveling alien circus that used to be in the Carousel of Progress building, where a flying saucer crashed into the roof, and it was filled with alien circus performers, and they had to kill time while they were waiting for a rescue craft. So it's still the same Carousel of Progress theater, but each scene you're seeing an alien circus act. And George Lucas had well, where's my grumpy? I need more than one grumpy old man cane. I need one for both hands, you know, and wave it in the air. And for those of you who visited Disneyland in 1972, I hope this show brought back some nice memories. And for those of you who never had a chance to get there, I hope it gave you somewhat of a feel of, you know, what Disneyland used to be like. It was an intimate, magical experience. I still love Disneyland today. If you said, "Jim, here's a ticket, here's a plane ticket, you can come out to Disneyland," I'd be there. I'd be there. I wouldn't even be packing anything. I'd just be there because I enjoy Disneyland so much, and how they can pack in so much into, you know, a small area, and it doesn't intrude on each other. No. But do you guys have anything else to say about 1972?
Well, no. I mean, you know, there just people picture what it was like. You know, there was no the 1967 Tomorrowland was still kind of fresh, and it was the old Fantasyland, and you know, Toontown wasn't available for guests, and no Indiana Jones Adventure, and no Big Thunder Mountain, no Splash Mountain.
Nope.
You know, it was a different place, and the Matterhorn was quite different because they didn't have
Space Mountain either. Yeah.
No Space Mountain.
And there were a lot of benches where you could sit. You'll notice they've removed benches from Disneyland. Now, the Disneyland spin is, well, because there's so many people, this impedes traffic and traffic flow and all that. But the business reason is, if you're sitting on a bench, then you're not going into a store and buying something. You're not getting on an attraction. You're not going into a restaurant to eat something. You're sitting there. Shame on you. And shame on us.
No loitering.
Because we are not monetizing that space, for crying out loud. Walt wanted benches there. He and Lillian were a grandmother and a grandfather at that time. You know, that was the whole point of putting benches around the hub, is that so he and Lily could sit there where their grandchildren ran off, and they would always come back to the hub, and they could find Grandpa and Grandma. Right. You know?
It's supposed to be a park.
I need a grumpy old man cane for my right foot.
It's supposed to be a park. It's supposed to be, you know, parks have benches. So.
Yeah. And so those of you who are fascinated about this, please make sure you go to Amazon.com and get Disneyland Historical Highlights. There is a chapter on 1972 in there. And some of the same stuff is covered in that, but there's so much more in there. And coming out in September is a book that I'm really looking forward to, which is Off to Neverland, 70 Years of Disney's Peter Pan, because I don't think Disney's going to do anything to celebrate that anniversary. And by the way, this book has been in work for, some people always ask me, how long does it take you to write a book? You're always turning out these books. How long does it take you to write a book? And I say, all my life. Because the foreword to this book is by Margaret Carey, who was a live-action reference for Tinkerbell, and one chapter is an exclusive interview I did with Margaret about all the things involved with the filming for that and the filming for the mermaids, because she was also the red-headed mermaid. The afterword is by, dun, 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 June Foray. Now, some of you are going to say,
no way.
Foray passed away. And I'm going to say, yes, you are absolutely right. But I started writing this book in 1992. And I knew June from ASIFA, because I would help her out with ASIFA. And I'd written articles about her and interviewed her about her work for Jay Ward. And she read my rough draft and so wrote the foreword. Now it's the afterword. Wow. And for those who don't know, June Foray was the voice of the Indian squaw in Peter Pan, and also the voice and the live-action reference for the brunette mermaid. And so she talks about that experience in her afterward. So,
well, if you don't know who June Foray is, Mel Blanc was the male June Foray. Let's put it that way.
June Foray did voice work in Mulan, but she was also Rocky the Flying Squirrel, Natasha Fatale.
She did
in the Twilight Zone episode with Telly Savalas. She's the voice of, yes. Talking Tina there, right?
And you know why? You know why she was, right?
Why? Tell us.
Because she was the voice of Chatty Cathy before that.
Yes. You're very good. I'm very impressed. Well, all of these things, all of these little things keep getting lost, and nowadays that seems to be more frequently. And I hope with the big celebration that's coming out for the 100-year celebration to celebrate the opening of the Disney Brothers studio in 1923, I hope with that big celebration that we don't, and the company, Disney company, doesn't minimize and lose Walt Disney. I think there are a lot of people today who don't have that connection with Walt because they didn't grow up seeing him weekly on TV, and that includes those reruns that were on the Disney Channel. And boy, do I miss, the original programming from the Disney Channel. And I keep thinking, you could run that late at night. You could run that, from 11 o'clock to 4 o'clock in the morning. And there would be people who would be staying up to watch that or record that. But you know what? Bob Chapek never phones me to ask my opinion. I'm just as surprised as you are. But, that is the case. But anyway, I hope that they celebrate Walt, and I hope that they celebrate Roy, because I don't see Roy being celebrated with this 50th anniversary of Walt Disney World. There wouldn't have been a Walt Disney World without Roy Disney. And, well, now I'm going to need a grumpy old man cane for my left foot. That's about it. And a wheelchair so I can wave them all in the air at the same time for that. But we need to be grateful for the things we have. And one of the things that we have is we have Ken and Lynn, and we have the Sweep Spot, and they keep Disney history, Disney heritage, the love of the Disney brand, not necessarily the Disney business, but the Disney brand. They keep it magical and they keep it alive. So if you're listening to this podcast, you need to thank them. Send them an email, send them a text, do something on Facebook, whatever, and say, hey, thank you. I just wanted to let you know this makes a difference. The grave marker of on Roy O. Disney's grave, the grave marker is actually, he made the world a better place.
Yeah.
And I have never interviewed anyone who worked with him or knew him who would disagree with that. And what a wonderful legacy to have. And I hope it's a legacy that we'll all be able to have when it comes to be our time. Again, I hope all your Disney dreams come true. Thank you for inviting me back on the podcast. Think about doing podcasts about the Disneyland that never was and Walt Disneyland. I'd be excited to do those, but only if the listeners are excited about that. So, again, another reason for you to contact Lynn and Ken. And thank you guys so much again.
Thank you, Jim, for coming on. We always love chatting with you, and definitely go out and seek out Jim's books, because this is just a little bit of Jim in our podcast.
Yes, thank Jim for coming on the show by getting his books. He's that's great stuff. So thank you so much, Jim.
Wow. So I really enjoy when Jim comes on the show. Some people say, "Hey, you guys get a break. You get the week off," But you know what?
I'm trying to learn not to interrupt people when they're on a roll.
Yeah.
Sometimes I can't help myself, but it's best just to when people are being interesting, when they're sharing stuff with you that's interesting, unless you have something that's really, really, really pertinent and even more interesting to jump in with, just let them talk. And I'm still trying to learn that. So, but that's why we do that. That's why, because Jim has so much to say, and it's fascinating stuff.
Yeah, you can't get this, some of this you don't hear anywhere else. I listen to a lot of Disney podcasts, and I don't hear this kind of information out there on these podcasts. Not to put any of them down, I'm just saying that if you want to, get information that you don't hear anywhere else, this is definitely it. Period. Not just when Jim is on, but I feel, not to talk us up, but I'm just saying, we have these cast members on. I mean, where are you going to hear some of these stories? So,
and why? And we are. What are we, Lynn?
We are the #1 Disneyland podcast, hosted by 2 former Disneyland cast members. #1. All right. And we are, now that we're talking ourselves up a little bit here, we actually have. We have 1 review. I thought it was 2. Okay, we have a review to read, and I don't know why Apple Podcasts app cuts off the titles. I've heard other podcasts try to read the titles, and it does the same thing. It says this was just this past Saturday, so I don't know the date on that, like the 30th maybe. It says highlights the depth and then it cuts it off, but it's 5 stars, and it's by J Pod Blue. It says here, I started listening to the Clean Sweep 2 months ago, not knowing it also highlights, I think he means the sweet spot, 2 months ago, not knowing it also highlights the history and behind the scenes of Disneyland, and it is now my favorite Disney-related podcast. I'll admit, I often skip straight to the guest interviews, sorry. I love learning from the host and guests. My favorite so far is Wendy James, and how she extends the Disney magic into school districts she now leads as a custodian. This podcast has taught me Disney is all around us, and the lasting influences Disneyland has on technology, engineering, culture, and joy in Southern California and around the world. Thank you to the hosts for their time and energy. Wow. Thank you.
Thank you for that review. I'm touched. I mean, there's a good point to be made in that we do demonstrate how Disney extends throughout the world, and people take their experiences and they take them into new jobs and new opportunities. And yeah, so thank you for that review. We love getting reviews. It helps people find the show. So thank you.
I found it interesting just because of our changes that we've made the last 2 episodes here, where we cut the, we separated them, and people can now go right to the, the main topic. If current events is not your thing, and that's okay, then you can get right to the main topic on this show. But if you like hearing the current events, then it's a bonus, because then you get a show every week. So, yeah, that's cool. Well, thank you very much. Appreciate that.
If current events is your thing, that's the next episode. That's right. How we work here. We alternate. And so if you subscribe on someplace like Apple Podcasts, the next episode you'll get will be current events.
Who knows? Maybe we'll change it back. We don't know. But we're always changing and trying to improve. But for right now, I really think this is a good change for the podcast. And it kind of makes sense. It's a little different, but for us. But yeah, I'm excited about the change, and we've had some good feedback about it too. Yeah, don't miss us at D23 Expo. Go to our website. You can get our books. You can get T-shirts, links to Amazon and our audiobooks and our sponsors. Concierge, Hojo Anaheim. We have a link on there to get a discount if you want to stay at Howard Johnson's hotel. So we have a bunch of things going on there. So go over to thesweetspot.com and check that out. All right. I think that does it. But thank you so much for listening, and we'll talk with you next time.